At the very heart of Europe lies a land whose history is as turbulent as it is remarkable. A land where mighty rivers carve through mountains and forests, where castles rise from the mist, and where ideas have changed the fate of the world. It is a land of poets and soldiers, of division and unity, of devastation and rebirth. Germany's story is not a straight line, but a winding road, full of triumphs and tragedies that shape not only its people, but the entire continent. To understand modern Germany, we must journey back 2,000 years, before the name Germany even existed, when the land was not a nation, but a wilderness of tribes. Long before there was a Germany, the land was a vast expanse of forests, meadows, and rivers, dotted with small tribal communities. These were people who lived close to nature. Their lives revolved around the seasons, planting and harvesting crops in the fertile river valleys, hunting boar and deer in the dark woods, fishing in the swift flowing streams. Their homes were simple wooden huts with thatched roofs, and their faith rested in spirits, gods, and sacred groves hidden deep in the forest. To the outside world, they were mysterious and wild, known collectively as the Germanic tribes. The Romans, the masters of the known world, encountered these tribes as they pushed their empire across Gaul and toward the Rhine and Danube. To the disciplined legions, this was a dark and dangerous frontier, an untamed wilderness beyond the ordered stone cities of Rome. Determined to expand their influence, they built wooden watchtowers, stone fortresses, and military roads cutting into the forests. They believed that sooner or later, Germania too would be tamed by Roman discipline. But the land fought back. In the year 9 CE, a coalition of Germanic tribes, led by Arminius, a man who had once served Rome, rose against their would-be conquerors. In the dense, rain-soaked woods of the Teutoburg forest, 3 entire Roman legions were ambushed. The legions, weighed down by baggage and trapped by narrow forest paths, were overwhelmed by warriors striking from the trees. Spears flew, shields shattered, and panic spread. By the end, thousands of Roman soldiers lay dead, their standards captured, their pride broken. For Rome, it was one of the greatest disasters in its history. After Teutoburg, Rome never fully conquered the heart of Germania. Instead, they built defenses, long walls of stone and wood, forts with watchtowers, and frontier towns where trade could flourish, but armies dared not push too far. Germania remained outside the empire, a land untamed, its people fiercely protective of their freedom. As centuries passed, the Germanic tribes began to move. Waves of migration swept across Europe. Some marched south into Italy and Spain, others west into Gaul, and some crossed the sea into Britain. These migrations brought the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and laid the foundations of medieval kingdoms. But the lands they left behind, the heart of future Germany, remained fragmented, a patchwork of villages, clans, and small chieftains, waiting for a new identity that would not emerge for centuries. After the migrations had reshaped Europe, the land we now call Germany remained a fragmented territory of dukes, tribes, and lords. Yet in this age of uncertainty, new leaders rose to forge kingdoms. Among them stood one man whose shadow still stretches across European history, Charlemagne. In the year 800, Charlemagne, king of the Franks, was crowned emperor by the Pope in Rome. His empire stretched across much of Western and Central Europe, from the Pyrenees to the Elbe, uniting lands that had once been Roman provinces with territories that had never known Rome's rule. For the first time since the fall of the Western Empire, Europe felt the weight of a single ruler's authority. He was not merely a conqueror, but a patron of learning, reform, and faith. Under his reign, monasteries became centers of knowledge, schools flourished, and Latin texts were copied and preserved. The idea of a united Christian Europe, though fragile, took root. Yet, Charlemagne's empire was short-lived. After his death, his realm fractured, divided among heirs who quarreled and carved the empire into pieces. Out of this fragmentation emerged what came to be known as the Holy Roman Empire, a realm that claimed the legacy of Rome, but never truly possessed its unity. The Holy Roman Empire was unlike the kingdoms of France or England. It was not one single country, but a vast patchwork of duchies, bishoprics, free cities, and counties, each ruled by its own lord. The emperor himself was elected by powerful princes, and his authority was often more symbolic than real. At times, the emperor could command armies and shape history. At other times, he was little more than a figurehead, begging cooperation from rulers who guarded their independence jealously. Life in these centuries revolved around castles and walled towns. The castle was not only a fortress, but a symbol of power, towering over villages below. Markets bustled with activity, merchants selling grain, spices, and fine cloth, peasants bringing livestock to trade, blacksmiths hammering iron into tools and weapons. For ordinary people, survival depended on harvests, loyalty to their lords, and the constant threat of war. During the High Middle Ages, German influence spread eastward in what became known as the Ostsiedlung, or eastward settlement. German-speaking farmers, craftsmen, and merchants established new towns and villages across lands in today's Poland, Czechia, and beyond. This expansion carried German culture and trade far beyond its original heartlands, setting the stage for centuries of shifting borders and identities. Trade flourished too, especially in the north. The Hanseatic League, a network of powerful trading cities such as Lübeck, Hamburg, and Bremen, turned northern Germany into an economic powerhouse. Its fleets of ships carried goods from London to Novgorod, bringing wealth and influence to its merchants. In time, the Hanseatic League became a state within a state, more powerful than kings in shaping commerce. But beneath the wealth and progress, tensions simmered. Rivalries between lords, competition between towns, and the constant push and pull between the emperor and the princes prevented any real unity. Germany remained a land of many voices, prosperous, diverse, but divided. And these divisions would one day plunge it into darkness. By the dawn of the 16th century, the Holy Roman Empire had become a vast but fragile mosaic. Princes ruled their own domains like kings, cities thrived on trade, and emperors struggled to impose authority. But new winds were blowing across Europe, winds of reform and rebellion. In 1517, a monk named Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door in Wittenberg, His words challenged the authority of the Catholic Church and questioned practices that had stood for centuries. The spark he lit spread like wildfire. Germany became the heart of the Protestant Reformation, a movement that would divide Christendom and ignite fierce conflict across Europe. As religious ideas spread, so did turmoil. Princes aligned themselves with either Catholicism or Protestantism, each staking their claim to both faith and power. Tensions escalated into open conflict. And in 1618, war erupted, a war that would scar Germany for generations. The 30 Years' War was not a single battle, but decades of chaos. Mercenary armies roamed the land, loyal more to plunder than to faith. Entire villages burned, harvests were trampled, and starvation spread like a shadow. Plague followed war, leaving towns silent and fields overgrown. Some regions lost a third of their people, others half. The war devastated Germany in ways few could have imagined. When peace was finally signed in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia, Germany emerged shattered and fragmented. Hundreds of states, bishoprics, and free cities remained, each guarding its independence fiercely. The dream of unity seemed more impossible than ever. Yet, even in devastation, seeds of change lay hidden seeds that would one day give rise to a new Germany. From the ashes of war, a new power slowly emerged in the north. Prussia, once a modest kingdom on the Baltic, began to grow into something formidable. Unlike many other German states, Prussia invested in discipline, efficiency, and above all, its army. In the 18th century, Frederick the Great took the throne. Brilliant, ruthless, and cultured, he transformed Prussia into a military powerhouse. He led bold campaigns that expanded its territory, but he was also a patron of the arts, philosophy, and music. Under his rule, Prussia became both feared and admired, a small state with outsized influence. Meanwhile, German culture blossomed in ways that reached far beyond the battlefield. Poets like Goethe and Schiller, philosophers like Kant and Hegel, and composers like Beethoven and Bach shaped the intellectual and artistic life of Europe. Though politically divided, German-speaking people began to imagine themselves connected through a shared culture, a common spirit that transcended borders. By the end of the 18th century, Prussia and Austria stood as the two great German powers, rivals for influence. And soon, the entire continent would be shaken by a force even greater than them both, Napoleon Bonaparte. At the dawn of the 19th century, Napoleon's armies swept across Europe like a storm. German states fell one by one, old borders crumbled, and in 1806 the ancient Holy Roman Empire was formally dissolved. For centuries, it had existed as a loose confederation. Now it was gone. For many Germans, this was both humiliation and awakening. After Napoleon's defeat, the Congress of Vienna in 1815 redrew the map of Europe. Germany was reorganized into a loose German confederation, but true unity was still denied. Yet the seeds of nationalism had been planted. Writers, students, and revolutionaries began to dream of a Germany united not just by language and culture, but by political will. The man who would turn this dream into reality was Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia. Through masterful diplomacy and carefully orchestrated wars, Bismarck reshaped the destiny of Germany. He first allied with Austria to defeat Denmark, then turned on Austria itself in 1866, securing Prussia's dominance. Finally, he provoked France into war in 1870, uniting the German states against a common enemy. In 1871, victory came. In the glittering Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, surrounded by generals and princes, the King of Prussia was proclaimed German Emperor. At last, after centuries of division, Germany stood as a united nation. The newly united Germany grew with astonishing speed. Railways linked its cities, factories churned with steel and coal, and science advanced rapidly. German inventors and companies led in chemistry, engineering, and medicine. Berlin and Munich became centers of culture, industry, and politics. But with success came tension. Germany's rapid rise unsettled its neighbors. Britain, France, and Russia eyed this new power with suspicion. Alliances formed, rivalries deepened, and Europe became a powder keg. By 1914, one spark was enough to ignite a global inferno. The First World War began with optimism, but quickly descended into horror. German armies surged forward in 1914, only to be locked in years of trench warfare. Soldiers lived in mud-filled ditches, surrounded by barbed wire, machine guns, and constant shellfire. The industrial age had turned war into a nightmare of steel and poison. By 1918, exhausted and starving, Germany could fight no longer. The Kaiser abdicated, the empire collapsed, and a republic was declared. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh terms, territorial losses, crippling reparations, and a deep sense of humiliation. For many Germans, it felt like betrayal and disgrace. The 1920s brought chaos. Inflation spiraled out of control. Savings were wiped out overnight. People carried baskets of worthless money to buy bread. Political factions battled in the streets, and democracy seemed fragile. Out of this turmoil rose extremist voices, promising strength, pride, and renewal. In the 1930s, Germany fell under the rule of men who promised greatness but delivered destruction. Their ambitions led the world into the Second World War, a conflict more devastating than any before. Cities were reduced to rubble, millions were killed, and by 1945, Germany lay in ruins, occupied by foreign armies. After the war, Germany was split between East and West. In the West, the Federal Republic of Germany was built as a democracy tied to the United States and Western Europe. In the East, the German Democratic Republic was created under Soviet control, with strict surveillance, propaganda, and repression. Berlin became the heart of the Cold War struggle. In 1961, a concrete wall rose through its streets, topped with barbed wire and guarded by soldiers. Families were torn apart, neighbors separated, lives divided overnight. The Berlin Wall became the starkest symbol of a divided world. For decades, West Germany thrived, rebuilding into an economic powerhouse, while East Germany languished under shortages and restrictions. The contrast between freedom and repression grew impossible to ignore. In 1989, history turned once again. Across Eastern Europe, people demanded freedom, and in Germany, protests filled the streets. Borders cracked open, and one night, the Berlin Wall fell. People poured through checkpoints, climbing the wall, hugging strangers, singing and crying as decades of division ended in a single moment of unity. Within a year, Germany was reunified. The wounds of division did not heal overnight. Economic and social challenges remained, but the dream of one Germany had finally come true. Since reunification, Germany has become the heart of Europe once more. It is a leader in economics, diplomacy, and culture. It has faced its past with honesty, memorializing the victims of war and dictatorship, while striving to build a future of peace and cooperation. Today, Germany stands as a nation that remembers its past but refuses to be defined by it. It is a land of resilience, of reinvention, of lessons painfully learned and courageously carried forward. Its story is not finished, because history, like Germany itself, is always being written anew.